Good morning, it's 7:30 and we are going to start our board meeting. So Mrs. Weber, please call the roll.
Mr. Mallett?
Here.
Mrs. Bitter? Here. Mr. Comerford?
Here.
Dr. Steger? Here. And Mrs. Weiss? Here.
Please stand and join me for the pledge of allegiance.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
As we start our meeting today, I'd like to remind everybody of our mission and vision. Our mission is to cultivate a culture of academic excellence through inclusion and innovative learning opportunities for the whole child. And our vision is to empower all learners to reach their full potential in a globally competitive world. I need a motion for the approval of the agenda, which includes addendum, superintendent, agenda items number 5, 13, and 16. Personnel consent agenda 1H, I, J, 2, J, K.
So moved. Second.
Mrs. Weber, please call the roll.
Mrs. Weiss? Aye. Mrs. Bitter? Dr. Steger? Aye. Mr. Mallett?
Aye.
Mrs. Bitter? Aye. And Mr. Comerford?
Aye. Agenda is approved. I need a motion for the approval of the minutes.
So moved.
Any questions or comments from the board? Mrs. Weber, please call the roll.
Mrs. Weiss? Aye. Dr. Steger? Aye. Mr. Comerford?
Aye.
Mr. Mallett?
Aye.
And Mrs. Bitter? Aye.
Minutes are approved. Mrs. Weber, if you could give us a brief overview of the meeting
Thank you.
protocol.
Thank you, Mr. Ballard. Welcome everyone today to our August 3rd Board of Education meeting. Boy, it's getting close to the start of the school year. And thank you to all of you who are also attending our meeting virtually today. Out on our website, you will be able to find the agenda and addendum that was just approved by the Board of Education for today's meeting. For those of you who are in our virtual audience, we'll also be able to find later today the minutes that were just approved by the Board of Education from the July 20th board meeting. For those of you who wish to participate virtually in public participation, you can send those requests to our moderator today, Mr. Christian Long, our Director of Technology. His email address is longc@sycamoreschools.org. Thank you all for joining us. For those of you who do have other comments, we do have a chat feature. We ask that you use that only for technical issues with them. So with that, we're ready to get started, Mr. Ballard.
Great, moving on to public participation. I am aware of one public participation from Mrs. Godby. Is she on the line virtually?
I know the request was fairly late last night, knowing it was an early meeting this morning, so perhaps she'll be here in a bit, but
Okay.
it sounded as though she planned to be here in person.
Okay. We can, if she does show up, we can certainly put her in the agenda somewhere else. Is there any other public participation requests? Great. Okay, we'll move on to superintendent's agenda. Item number 1 is capital improvement funding update.
Mr. Ballard, if you would, before we get to that update.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's all right.
Sorry about
It's
that.
not on the agenda, so it's not your fault. And I apologize that it was not placed on the agenda, but it's always exciting when we get to introduce you to a new team member. And we're with the appointment of Mr. Mino to principal. Obviously, it left his position as assistant principal vacant. And Mr. Mino immediately attacked it and said, I'm ready to go after and try to find our permanent replacement. He didn't have to look too far. We're excited to welcome Mrs. Combs to our team. She brings a wealth of experience from 2 different districts. She previously worked in early childhood education as a speech language pathologist at Cumberland City Schools. And I actually got to meet Mrs. Combs during her administrative courses at Xavier. So through some discussions at Xavier, I said, Sycamore is a great place to work. And we would certainly welcome someone of your skills and abilities to our team. So don't think it took much more than that to get her here, but We were excited for her to join the team, and she has filled in a number of roles through internships, working with Mr. Mino, working with Mr. Tudor, really understanding what it takes to be an administrator in this district and in the building. I saw her at Green 101 every year. She was always helping to coordinate activities and events. So she has gotten a flavor and a feel for what an average day is like at EH Green. And just before the meeting, I said to her, you're getting a trial by fire, because she just got back from vacation and she's being thrown right into the mix of the team. And I know they have just met with their department leaders this week, and they all said how engaging and passionate and how much they felt from that team and excitement that they felt. And I think Mrs. Combs realized that she's made a good move to move into administration. So we are excited for her and excited to see what she's going to do, and a great complement of skills to Mr. Mino and Mrs. Constable in that building. And she has the support and trust of the staff. And there were students involved in the interview, and they enjoyed Mrs. Combs and felt that she was the right fit for the position. So Mrs. Combs, thank you and welcome to our team.
Well, thank you all. I mean, I'm so excited. I think it's all the feelings, the nervous, the excitement, the ready to get started. And, the new building is amazing and the kids are awesome and the staff has been fantastic. I've gotten so many wonderful emails from everyone, welcoming me to the new position, but being excited for me as well. So I just appreciate the opportunity. And thank you to Jay for believing in me, and Trisha and all of you. So let's get started.
Great, congratulations.
Thank you very much.
Now we can do that. So I will turn it over to Mrs. Weber. I do not know if Mr. Lovell is on. He is, my apologies, he is at a conference, a safety summit in Columbus with Mr. Foster and Mrs. Eldey, and I'm glad that they are there getting updated on safety information. Very critical.
Thank you, everyone. This is just a quick overview, no action needed today. Not quite there yet, Mr. Long. No action needed for today, but really more just providing information and preparation for something we're going to ask you to approve, hopefully at our next Board of Education meeting, and ask your approval of the bids for the transportation facility. What Mr. Lovell and I have been working on, and what we wanted to do is just give you an overview of some updates to our capital improvement plans, thinking about primarily those things that we are thinking may occur. Potential drawdown of the cash reserve for final implementation of the master facility. So just going back, the transportation bids for that facility are due to be in this Friday. So we will get more exact information as a result of that bid process. I know we've had, I think, 5 contractors that are interested in it, and so that's good news. You're always concerned, and hopefully that will drive some competition. But even with that kind of competition, we know that the cost of the building, because of cost of construction, labor market concerns, supply chain concerns, and the scope of the project is going to be more than the $3 million that was initially included in the bond issue for that project. Back when we put the bond issue plan together, our intent at that point in time was that we put in dollars for construction. We didn't have funds in the bond issue for the land purchase for that facility. As we approved last board meeting, actually, we are going to still have costs for the land, but it's going to be over a 30-year lease. So about $100,000 is going to come out of our operating budget. So that's not a cost that we're going to see coming down or coming as a drawdown of our cash reserve to support that. However, based on the projections that we've received, not only from our architect, but also from another third party, and potential costs of the transportation facility, we're currently projecting that the total cost of that could be as much as $2.5 million more than the $3 million that we had initially included in our bond issue budget. I don't have all of the details of why that's the case, but it's many of the things that we're continuing to hear as we progress through the implementation of the master facility plan. So what we wanted to share with you today are not only the impact of utilizing cash reserve for that, but also a few other changes from when we looked at this capital plan just a few months ago, and some things that we're thinking about more from a planning aspect than necessarily that we know these costs are going to occur. So what I'd like to go through are just those things that are highlighted on the sheet that I provided, because those are things that have changed since the last time we discussed the plan. The first one is roof repair and replacement at Blue Ash Elementary. What we are looking at doing, as opposed to, we're actually going to work on that project sooner within the scope of the 5-year plan. We're looking at doing some maintenance repair in this current year and pushing the actual replacement of the roof out a few years. We don't know that that's going to actually going to be able to be successful, but we think that it can. And it's going to give us some time to reevaluate the roof replacement project, maybe looking at a time period when costs are down a little bit on that kind of facility upgrade. The next one is roof replacement and reallocation to the bond issue for the high school. If you recall, when we approved one of the GMPs for the high school, that was for the interior athletics, so that would be gymnasium, locker rooms, looking at the funding that we had available remaining in the bond issue for the high school, to make acceptance of that project possible based on current market conditions, prior to without digging in and basically taking all of the contingency left in that budget. We asked the board to provide us the opportunity and to bring back a recommendation to move about $600,000 from that replacement of roofs that occurred back in 2020 to be able to utilize those funds for the bond issue and completion of the high school project. The next item is tennis court maintenance, and actually this is replacement. As a result of the review, when the Kleiningers was working with us to look at the tennis court restoration that we're going to be doing, and you've actually approved that contract at last board meeting, they basically determined that they think they're going to need to tear up the high school tennis courts and completely replace them in a couple of years. It appears that we're going to be doing this fall, so that our teams can play this fall. Should get us through a couple of years, but they think it's probably going to be time in the next few years to do a complete replacement of the high school tennis courts. The transportation department, that again is the additional $2.5 million that we're projecting. You're going to need in addition to the bond issue funds to be able to complete that project. And then finally, we know that we want to give you a sense of if there are going to be any additional asks, so to be able to meet the master facility plan. So what we did was we talked with SHP and our construction manager on that project to just kind of give us a sense of things that they are anticipating. It doesn't mean that they're actually going to come to fruition, but just things that, seeing how things are going, the state of the current contingency on any of the projects, and things that we might need to anticipate. They projected about $1.5 million potentially to be utilized to finish up all of the projects that we have in place. So just kind of give a rundown. SIMS is nearly complete. They haven't identified any current risks that are outstanding from that project. The high school renovation, the main things that they're looking at is just unforeseen mechanical issues based on the renovation of the maybe demo of any of the high school safety systems, technology related items. And then there's also an alternate for baffles in the gymnasium that I think they would like for us to take in order to deal with noise and sound issues. At Green Intermediate, there's still the ongoing concern that once that demo is complete, that there might be some unforeseen soil issues. And then former gymnasium or the tie-in of the gymnasium and then the old cafeteria that's going to become the music area, whether there might be just some unforeseen mechanical issues in bringing in those old parts of the current building into new construction. At the junior high was 65% of it complete, and complete tear down of that building still outstanding. I think that is probably the greatest area of concern, just because of what they might find once that building is gone. Looking at continued issues with being able to route and install utilities, and just anything that they might find with the site as they continue to move forward with that. So based on that, they're asking the board just to kind of set aside about $1.5 million, potentially thinking that any of those things might challenge completion of all of our master facility projects. So taking that into account, one of the things just thinking about overall, I mean, for those 4 buildings, we have about $125 million worth of construction. If you take into account additional funds for transportation that we thought we were going to do, we knew we were going to have to do something anyway with land, and the additional $1.5 million. It's about, at $4 million, it's about 3% over we can initially grant. I have a colleague in another district that they approved a much smaller project for renovations and additions back in 2021 or 2020. And their projects are 30% of the budget. So 3% overall, I think when you look at the scope and what we've been able to achieve, the time frame that we've been able to achieve, that I think that's actually pretty good performance. But I still need to be aware of that, and I want you to be aware of it before you're asked to make a decision on the transportation facility. What I think is also important is that I just wanted to give you an overview of how that cash reserve drawdown impacts our over general fund budget. So see at the bottom of the sheet, just looking at where our current cash balance and cash reserves stand at the end of the 21-22 school year. Included in that, just to show you how that's going to be impacted over the next couple of years as projected in our 5-year forecast. So looking at just our drawdown based on just our operating drawdown, which we anticipated because of where we are in our levy cycle. And then including the cash reserve drawdown for the capital improvements that have been described above. Still at the end of fiscal year 26, which is where the 5-year forecast ends currently, that was approved in May, we're still at about 31-32% of our cash balance. Our cash reserve is still about 31-32% of our projected operating. So our goal has always been to make sure that it's greater than 25%, thinking about in 3 months of operations. So even with these changes, I think we're still in a good place. So I wanted to give you this update. I think my next question is there additional information that you need prior to 2 weeks from now? Anything else you want us to think about? I did also provide just on the second page just a history of what has been transferred from the general fund to the capital improvement fund over the last 3 years, or the last 10 years. So you can see kind of the scope of what we've done in the past. Going back 10 years ago, we were putting probably less of an allocation into those areas, primarily because we were coming up on a levy. For operations, we needed to really make sure that we protected our cash reserves to some extent, not knowing the success of that. Once it was approved in 2016, and we started to see those funds come into the district from that last operating levy, we felt more secure in our financial status. You can see that we did start to increase that allocation. That was, times when we were working on the science department upgrades. One of those years, we put more money into some of our technology because of COVID, and making sure that we had the tools that we needed to provide our virtual learning options. And then last year, just continuing to make sure that we put dollars into the budget to complete a lot of the roof replacement, things like that, to protect those new investments through our master facility. So, and this is something you can ask questions now, you can ponder this, you can follow up with me individually. Just wanted to make sure that if we need additional information, you have that prior to the decision that you need to make in a couple of weeks. Once we get through Friday with the bid opening, we'll have a better idea of the actual impact. Keep our fingers crossed that we can actually accept the bid, because right now, one of the challenges we're seeing in the market are boards can't do that because if it exceeds more than 10% of your published estimate, you have to reach out to all bids. So keep you informed, continue to ask questions, and between Mr. Lovell and I will be able to provide the information that you need to make that decision.
Mrs. Weber, thank you for that overview. This is really helpful. And I have a question about the fiscal year 24 projection where you added the 1.5 on the master facility contingency. Is there anything that you took out of that year to accommodate that 1.5 million in that number, or do we just push things off to the next 2 or 3 years?
The only thing that we did was we pushed off the Blue Ash elementary grouping. I will add, I thank you for asking that question, Mrs. Weiss. I did want to also follow up. I know one of the questions we've had on the master facility plan is some of the equipment and items that we needed to support departmental needs. And we have been able to work through some of the requests of the art department, the music department, to get them the technology support that they needed and some of the other items to be able to implement them. So a great start on that, and we're working through getting 3 to 5 year plan to finish up.
Okay, and my next question is looking at the cash reserve, and thank you for kind of giving us the re-education about wanting to have 3 months of operating expenses on cash reserve. If this holds true, when would you say we would go out for an operating levy?
I know we want to hold off until at least 2024, which would really actually start to impact the FY25 budget. We'll continue to monitor it. It may, depending on how state funding continues to come in, we still have some development within the district for some of our Montgomery Quarter and Summit Park and the natural gas pipeline. My hope might be even push it out a little bit further, but we're really going to have to take it into our expenditure trends as well.
Yeah. Okay. Great, thank you so much.
Yeah, kind of on the similar vein, questions. Number one, I understand pushing off the roof replacement so that we can put that 1.5 million, but this might not be, probably is not a question for you. Is there any concerns with pushing off the roof? Like it's going to cause more damage to anything?
That's something that I probably can't, but I think when you think about it, the overall impact is the same. It's just pushing it off. potentially, it's just changing the timing. So it would change the ending balance at the end
I'm not
of the
talking
year.
from a financial standpoint, I'm talking from an operational
Yeah.
standpoint.
So I think that the reality is that if we decide we have to move it back to where we had originally planned, it isn't gonna impact us financially. And it's
Correct, that's my question. 2 years from now, that money is the same. I don't want to push it back and have issues with the building, either environmentally for students or physically for the building, just to try to make numbers look better on a budget sheet when after 2 years, those numbers are the same. So maybe that's more a question for Mr. Lovell.
And I can work through that. I think we were just trying to look at, are there things that could make this more palatable, and potentially we saw that the need wasn't as critical as what we thought. We could push it further, but if it's something that we need to do, having that flexibility to continue to move forward with that project would be great.
Go ahead. Follow-ups. The 2.5 million for the transportation part, the board always knew that we were going to spend something either for land or that. So that number has been out there. Does that impact when the next levy would come at all?
No, that doesn't happen at all.
And then, what other questions?
Mr. Lovell texted me, so it must be on. So
Good morning, Mr. Lovell.
he said, we will still be doing work on the sensitive roofs. If you're there, you can talk for yourself instead of me reading your text.
Yeah, I just wanted to indicate, Mr. Ballant, to your point, while we're pushing the big push for the roof back a year, there are still sensitive areas of that roof that we have to address due to ongoing leaking and issues. So we're still, through our capital, we're still going to address those concerns through our operating budget. I just wanted to make note that we're just, we're not pushing it back full a year and not addressing the most immediate concerns.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Mrs. Weber, first of all, thank you very much. This is exactly what I was looking for when we talked about this a month ago. It's super helpful to see the 5-year complete picture. And I think the question that you answered, I have a couple of questions, but the projected operating revenue from the 5-year forecast does not include, I'm just confirming that does not include a increase in revenue from a levy that we would project. So this is without a levy impact, which would hit in either, from what I understood before, 25 or 26, depending on if we have the levy in 24 or 25. Okay. The question that I have, I guess there's like maybe more of a comment and then a question. If I look at the two biggest elements to me here are the master facility plan contingency and the transportation department, those would have ideally been covered through the bond issue. So I think from a soundbite standpoint, if I'm understanding this correctly, we can really, with this, no longer say we're under budget. We would have to say we're 3% over budget for the master plan effort. So am I understanding that correct?
I think from a soundbite, at least at this point in time, we're not 100% sure that the entire 1.5.
So somewhere between 2.5 and $4 million over budget is what we would need to say, because we have historically said we're on time and under budget, and I think to be accurate, we could no longer make that comment, if I'm understanding this correctly.
I think that's probably correct.
Okay. Yeah, just for our communications.
Or at least we're projecting that.
Yeah.
There are still a lot of moving parts, but I think that we're projecting it probably the end game of this because of all those critical issues within the overall economy. And being able to make sure that we're providing the scope that we promised to our community. I think that would probably be a statement that we'll end up making in the end.
And I would just add, there were a lot of specifically unforeseen soil issues that ate up a lot of that contingency that were very unexpected.
This was not a negative comment. I actually think it's a positive that given the current economic situation that we've been able to manage within 3% of the overall, I think is a positive. But I think it's important that we're, transparent with the community that we have now flipped from a projection of being under budget to being over budget.
Messaging matters.
Yeah,
But I think that to Mr. Mallon's point, we're fortunate we have the cash reserve that
yes,
we can meet those promises in terms of the scope of the projects for our community. And we've made great enhancements for kids and for our operation. And it's not going to make us have to go back to our taxpayers any sooner. So I think all of those things together are a positive outcome.
absolutely. And what you're not hearing from me is let's find a way to cut corners on what we're
Right.
building right now to get back. I think we're doing the right choices and the choices that we need to make to manage. That's, please don't interpret that I'm
No,
that I'm
no,
pushing
but
for
that's why I
a
think this
reduction.
conversation is so valuable for us. to
But
continue.
because I just have one more. There is one major element that I think could be missing from this capital improvement plan, and that's related to the natatorium. And I didn't see that here, and I didn't know and when that might, when might we have a forecasted. My understanding is that it's no longer likely that our private funding will cover the entire cost of the projected natatorium. That's my understanding. And so that would mean, I think we're gonna have an additional line item here to consider against the capital forecast, if I'm not mistaken.
There is a potential. Mr. Lovell, if you're still on, remind me when the design documents are going to be available for the
Yeah.
30% document?
HP is going to be hitting the print by first week of September and sending them over to our partners at HGC, but also our third-party consultants at JS Held. So we're hoping that we can get those back the following week, maybe following 2 weeks after they hit print. So I'm hoping by the second meeting in September, we're going to be able to come to you with those. I think they're actually going to be 50% drawings.
And I think at that point in time, we'll also have a better opportunity to determine whether, to what level additional private funding might be available to help offset those costs. So that's really the next step in the process, is just getting that much improved estimate of the cost for that renovation.
What's great about having this is now that when the clarity on the estimates and the clarity on the private funding come through, we'll have a clear understanding of the impact. If we needed to go against capital dollars for the pool or not, we'll know the impact. So thank you.
I don't want to interrupt. I also appreciate the way you laid this out, and thank you, Mr. Comfort, for requesting that. This is super helpful, and I would appreciate if you continue to use this format for us, especially if you do add other things as well, because I think it's important for the community to see this conversation in public and having this conversation. So my question for you is, so the 2.5 million for the transportation, you're saying you're gonna put that up for a vote next time. Can you just, it doesn't have to be now, but for the next time or now, just make sure to explain to us what would occur if we didn't vote for that. I mean, we have to know what the alternatives are. If we don't agree to adding 2.5 million, what would happen? And just having that understanding is important, because that's how we make our decisions, right? We need to know this is what we're not going to get if we don't do this. That to me is really important, because these are tough decisions. They cost a lot of money. We're going over budget, but we have to be able to look at that, and the public needs to see what happens when we don't make that decision.
It's a pretty simple answer to that. We'll have to start over again with the design of the transportation facility, and it'll be a much different building than what we're currently looking at. Right now, what we have designed is, and believe me, it's not going to be the blue pole barn we had in the past, but it's going to be a really nice facility, but it's still basically looking at the same functionality, which is what was most important, I think, to our transportation department, is being able to have appropriate workspace for our mechanics to keep our buses in great shape, being able to fuel our buses on site as opposed to doing that off site, having appropriate meeting and office space for our transportation department to be able to do their work. So and be able to store their equipment and their materials that they need to do their work. So it's a pretty simple equation, and we don't know that that's the exact number yet, but I think if we find that we can have additional funds beyond the bond issue, I think that's an absolute given. We would have to start all over. So
I also think it goes to a step farther than that. I'm just saying, if you have to cut a building in half, you're going to have to do away with things like maintenance. You're going to have to start outsourcing part of the transportation department, which would add significant operational costs to the district. So I would challenge you to look into, to answer Mrs. Bitter's request with some of that information too. If you do have to have that much part of the facility, what does that do to our operation?
And the reason I bring it up is just, we're looking at numbers. This is very important. We have to be fiscally responsible. We need to understand, how much money we're spending and be, careful for our taxpayers, but it comes at a cost if we don't do it. And I just want to hear the whole story. And I think it's important for our community to hear it too. Because if we don't have this, what impact this will have on our employees, on our transportation, and it can cause further costs and delays down the road. And this is it's a tough moment in time, and we have to deal with that, and the costs are going up. But I just appreciate that we're having that conversation. To me, that's what I need to hear, because then it helps me make an informed decision.
Yeah, and in addition to that, the temporary situation we have right now, they're making it work, but it's at a cost. And to our transportation. They've been very patient. That the place where we're located also is going to undergo some construction by the developer, and so the temporary space is a challenge to be able to keep that as long as we potentially needed to get this facility done. They're continuing to work with us, but that can only go on so far. There is a cost to us to have that temporary space as well. We may renting in the area as well as some of the supports of temporary facilities. So those are all things to keep in mind. Overall, I think in the end, it's going to be the project, and as opposed to paying for land up front, we're going to be paying for more costs.
My only question that I have, just because everyone else is already, being the last one, I don't have a lot more to add, except for the natatorium designs. If there's going to be more than one option on the design, that were with different price points, or is it just going to be 150% design? Potentially, that's right. The design process when you're designing like the remodel of the natatorium, are they going to be showing us different options with different price points, like a zero entry side, perhaps, like extending the pools, adding new blocks?
I'm happy to answer if you would like me to. So there will not be multiple designs.
Okay.
There's only, we've looked at this, really, I've been involved in this discussion probably for at least a 2-year period. There isn't that much space. There's just not that much ability to kind of adapt and adjust the spaces for all different types of uses. So we're looking at multiple ways to, the majority of the use is a competition pool for water polo and swimming. So that'll be the main focus of the pool. So that's the design. I will say, obviously, the generous donation of Mr. Seeger and his family, the desire was to turn it into a more competition style pool with appropriate seating and making it more of a venue for our student athletes and users of our pool. We do know we'll have some challenges with PE classes and things of that nature, but we'll have to work through those challenges.
Thank you, everyone ahead of me last time. Really challenging questions.
Anything else from the board on capital budget? Thank you, Mrs. Weber. Moving on, item number 2 is master facility plan. Exciting times.
Mr. Lovell, are you still on, or do you want?
I am still on. Would you like me to tackle this?
That'd be great.
And brevity.
Sorry.
Yeah. Absolutely. It's my understanding that the board just wanted some updates on some of the two kind of highlighted projects as we go into the start of the new year. So, Mr. Long, if you want to move to the next slide. So just a couple things about EH Green progress and use over there. We hit a big milestone about a week ago as we got our next phase occupancy, which I think we might have talked about from a board perspective. I can't remember all the conversations I'm having. But what that meant is that we were able to get all of our remaining items from Plains Moving and Storage in. We have all of our, pretty much all of our furniture in the building at this point. The lower academic quad, the furniture is put together. They're kind of working upper and then moving into the cafeteria. Our admin space has been put together for a while now. Our administrative team at Green's working over there. And we're starting to allow our teachers to come into the space to start looking kind of forward at their areas and what they want to do in there. Overall, things feel really good, not nearly as tight as we had hoped. The tightness of the project is honestly going to come with the renovated spaces. While they're projected to be open by the first day of school, the music wing, the gyms, and the connector to get over to those spaces, those are a tight fit. Other things that just want to highlight is that, and I know I've said this in emails to our team, I think we just all have to remember that substantial is not till November of 22. And so while it's absolutely safe for our students and staff to be in there, all life safety is in place. We are still going to be working in an active construction zone from the standpoint of both the demolition of the old building, kind of some of the site development, and then just going through that punch list and some of the items that we're doing. But as we kind of look forward to the start of this year, we've got a great momentum. Things are starting to come in play. To be able to work with Jay and his team to get folks in there. And so I think it'll feel really good the first start of the year. And then the last thing with Green, just to kind of highlight, I think it's important, is that right now our access drive heading to the back lot for the buses is that gravel drive. Our hope is still that we're able to shift that drive prior to the start of the school year. And I know this is a bad word, but there are some soil issues with where that's going. So that might be the barrier in getting that for the first day. But moving forward in hopes that we can get the new access drive in and not have to leverage that gravel drive. Mr. Long, if you want to move to the high school. By all kind of visual, by all visual accounts, I guess, if you were to look at the high school, you would say there's absolutely no way that thing's going to be ready. But I got information yesterday. I've been waiting on this information to kind of see where we're at, and things are progressing nicely. The kitchen is 70% complete. We're getting the flooring and the kitchen equipment next week. That's going to be a really big piece. It's going to start to kind of bring some finality to that area. Again, if you walk through that cafeteria now, I know Mr. Porter's kind of looking at going, is there any way our HGC assures that we'll get it done and be able to get in there? Again, it may not be substantial completion, but it'll be to the point where students and staff can be in those spaces. The front entrance, the south loop, is going to be complete for drop off, and our front entrance will be usable, which will include security features. The biggest delay that we'll see are just the internal finishes that we'll have with that new entrance. The bus lot, we're paving is scheduled for mid-August, and it's going to be ready for the start of the school year as well. If you're over there, you can see some of the undercuts and things like that they're doing in that space. So it's coming along. And then last is the campus parking. That will be ready for the start of the year as well. And that campus parking, if you remember, is adjacent to the new multi-use stadium. I won't necessarily get into the details of the stadium other than the fact that the turf is going to be installed. Things progress extremely nicely there as well. So the biggest issue that we're going to face with the high school, and I know our team is working diligently, I know Mallory's working with our high school team, that Cornell Road Bridge is just going to be brutal. And so we're doing everything we can to minimize the effect of that on the school day, but I think we just all have to be extremely aware that that's going to have as we navigate back to school. That's my updates.
Mr. Lovell, one question, because I see an interesting picture that I don't know that the board would pick up on. The middle picture at the bottom.
Yeah.
Explain what that is and where that is located in the high school.
Yeah, so That is one of our 2 lecture rooms at the high school. And so if you remember those spaces, they had kind of those green 1970s seats in there with the wood tables. Both those spaces are being redesigned. The upper space is going to be, I believe, used for math. The lower space is designed as a lecture hall, but it's kind of a multi-use space. So what Mr. Mader had kind of envisioned from that space was going to be where a debate club could be and things like that. They could do staff meetings in there if needed. And then that's also a space that we anticipate potentially moving our board meetings to as well. And so we're looking at some of the finishes in there to make more of a permanent space. So what you're looking at there is the first installation of those seats. And so that coming up out there, that's kind of that where you would set your laptop, and then the seats are getting installed this week, which are branded with the A's logo. So it's a really nice space. It's a multi-use space, and I think it'll be an area that will kind of be a showstopper for the high school. Again, coaches meetings, think about a lot of different areas that we need seats, maybe not as big as the theater, and something more comfortable than the cafeteria.
Great, thank you, Mr. Lovell.
Yep, my pleasure.
Any questions from the board on instructions? Thank you very much.
Yep.
We are going to actually move part of other before we ask Ms. Funbright to give us a community relationship update, because we have some members of our administration team that are going to speak in our other. So we'll let them do that and then get back to their visitation.
And one of the things I've learned really quickly is I'm not very good at anticipating where we're going to be at on the agenda. I'll say, come after a little after 8, it'll be great. But
You were very ambitious, I'm just going to say.
that's well, I was hoping. So it's one of the things that I think I could capture. But I felt like it's better to hear from our administrative team and some people that participated in our administrative retreat. So, everyone sitting at this table on the district team, including, our 3 building administrators, we sat and we spent time together in a 2-day retreat up at Liberty Center. And the authors of the book, Otherful, and thank you to Mrs. Weber. She provided gifts for the board. I know you already.
I have one, I read it too.
We would happily pass that along to someone else that might need it, but wanted you to see it because those authors came and just did a really good job of putting us, in the mindset for the school year. So I am not going to talk any more about the experience because that's why these 3 professionals are here, because I wanted them to be able to have a chance to tell you from their perspective what it was about, what some of the things that we did, and really their own personal reflections, what they feel comfortable sharing anyway, what they experienced over the day and a half. And this is really, we've talked about being able to hear from our building leaders more and not just hearing it from me. So I thought it was a great opportunity to allow them to share. So I'll allow them to decide who's going to go first and who wants to share perspective, and they're welcome to share about the retreat with you.
The 2 days, in my opinion, were just probably the most empowering PD that I feel like I've had here in the last 8 years. I felt like just as a district level team, as well as then just like our building admins, being able to be vulnerable with one another, getting to know one another in a bigger capacity. I feel like that's really what makes teamwork and drives true collaboration, and it moves districts forward. So I think that the first day that we left, I felt exhausted. I got home and went to bed probably earlier than I did ever before. My husband even asked, like, are you sick? Are you okay? Like, no, it was just really, really good. And our brains were just wrapped around really great conversation. I think the one big driving thing that we focused on was about fire, and really what is it that drives a human being. So that fire for them stood for fears, interests, responsibilities, and experiences. And at first you had to tackle, what's my own fire? What drives my own soul and feeds me? So then that way I can have a better understanding of how I serve people. But then on the flip side, you had to think of a situation potentially that went well and then one that didn't go so well, and think about it from someone else's perspective and what their fire is. So I think we all left with this mindset of really diving more deeper into self-reflection and thinking about what is my own fire, but then also every situation coming from the lens of what is driving someone else, and then is that and how is that impacting their response to the situation, and how can I slow down as a leader to understand their fire so I can really truly serve and be a better leader for all of our people, staff, students, everyone.
Absolutely. And I'll piggyback on that as well, that first, thank you for supporting these presenters coming in to work through this process with us. Chad brought this book to us last year and we devoured it and we talked about it. You may be aware that Montgomery Elementary did a whole book study on it as well. And it just has really taken fire with us. But it made a difference having these presenters come and get into the nitty gritty with us, get into the weeds and walk us through how can we do this to really, I mean, I've got notes from these sessions that I'm continuing to add to because I'm already applying this. In addition to the fire, one of the things that they talked about, and again, I'm scripting as they talked, and they focused on when others understand things differently than we do, we can see an opportunity rather than a threat. So it's when we are working as a team, because it's not just about leadership with administrators. It's about leadership with our staff. It's about the shared leadership to own the education of these children. It's all of us together. It's parents, it's community, it's teachers, it's administrators. And so it's how we can all be leaders within that. So the better we can work together and understand our differences and know that we're all still focused on the child. So they had us go through exercises that were exhausting, where we not just looked internally, but then we looked at where do we have these instances right now that are facing us and what else is coming our way, to where we talked about what is the problem and what contributes to it and what's my role in it and what can I do to see the other perspective. Just has really been eye-opening and given us a script to follow that will better have us focus on our kids as a community.
And I agree with both of those. I think for me, the setting just created a different type of atmosphere where we could share out and be more vulnerable, because a lot of the activities kind of made you look at yourself. It's very easy to look at things and think, oh, you got to do that different. And all of the questions and all of the activities basically came back to you. And so the questions and the way it was formatted really made you think about how you approach things. And that to me was a huge takeaway, because then I felt vulnerable, so I'm sharing out things, other people start. So then you truly see people in a different light, more granular. And that's to me how you build a true relationship and a true team, a true bonding, because we're all guilty. Things go so fast and we have so much we need to get done. And we have all these great goals and all these things. But you got to slow down sometimes. And I'm guilty of that, because it's like, what do we need to get done? And the two presenters just did it in a very organic way, where it also didn't feel like, you felt like pressure to share out or to be vulnerable. So for me, that was a huge takeaway. And then it's, it just, we're in meetings and things, but then now I may feel more comfortable, and I've been here for 6 years, but when you hear people share out, they're like, okay, we're all human too. We all have struggles, and we all need to take a second, because if we don't fix that foundation, then all those other things, you can never be as successful. So for me, that was a huge takeaway.
Great. Yeah, thank you for sharing.
Just wanted you to hear from the team, because and I'm sure other people that are sitting here could share the impact of those 2 days. And the impact of a day and of a professional learning or professional development opportunity is not what just happens in that space. It's also what happens after, and how does it carry forward. And we've already started intentional activities and things that we're going to do to make sure we continue that momentum, because it was my first time in 24 years where I left something like that, and I was exhausted as well. I think I went home and I tried to collapse, but there were so many other things going on. But it was a good exhaustion, and it was empowering. It was energizing. It was engaging. It made us feel close, I think, to one another to the point where, you know, I think we looked at each other around the room at the end, and I'm not going outside the container. We talked about we have to keep things inside the container, but I think we felt for the first time there was a high level of trust between every single person in that room. So I can personally say I got called out twice by the presenters. One is that you have to ask for help from this team, from the board team, from the administrative team, from teachers. So I will be better about doing that. And he made it awkward sometimes. He would like stare at me. Like, Alyssa, you need to ask for help. And then he would hold it for an extra like 5 seconds.
Yeah.
So you knew it was like, and then the other thing, and I appreciate, you know, Beth, and also these authors are people that I met and have had conversations with all year. They've impacted my life in a leadership role. But, you know, they called me out on some other personal things that caused me maybe to be less trusting. And that was interesting for complete strangers that you just met and at the end of a retreat to call you out on things that you know are correct. So Mrs. Weber knows me probably better than anybody from our time being together. And she called me out on some things, you know, personally, and I won't go over those, but I appreciate her so much for that level of trust that, you know, we have, and being able to say those tough things that need to be said. So
I still pretend I'm the big sister and not his mother, but.
Great, thank you
Thank
for
you.
sharing.
thank you for being here.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
But the reason we moved it up, and I appreciate it, they have busy days.
Thank you.
They
Thank you for
took time
that.
out of their day to be here, so.
They just did boot camp on Monday with me. They've seen some of this stuff.
Okay, now we'll move on to Ms. Von Bright's community relations. So thank you for joining us this morning. It's been a while since we saw you.
I was gonna say the same thing, right? It's been a while since I've been physically present at a meeting. It's been even longer since I've had the opportunity to speak to you about our communications and community relations department. I just, first off, I wanted to say thank you publicly to Mr. Lewis, the team, the board. You guys have granted me a lot of flexibility and grace as I navigate new motherhood and being able to participate in these meetings virtually and being home close to my 9-month-old who's still nursing. I just really appreciate that. So thank you very much for that. I want to take you through this today. I heard you on brevity. I agree with Shakespeare, brevity is the soul of wit, so I'll try to move through this as quickly as possible because I know we've got a lot of other things to do. So really the purpose of my role, in my opinion, is to celebrate our students and staff and to connect with our community. And you see the quote that's up there. I tell our team, maybe not exactly this, but similar to this all the time, we have to make the positive just so loud that the negative becomes impossible to hear. If we're not telling our story, somebody else is, and chances are they might not be getting it right. So that's definitely the main goal of my role and all the things that I put out that we, for our district. Go ahead and move to the next one. So I wanted to take you through this. The Sycamore Advisory Commission conducted a communication survey as part of a research project this spring, which thank you to that team. They did a phenomenal job with the project, and the information that came out of that has been really beneficial for me. So they looked at classroom communication, building communication, and district communication, and we had over 930 respondents, which I think is great. We don't usually see that high of a level of responses. So it was also across the board, K-12, all buildings represented. So we got some really good information from that. But just that at a high level, the overall feeling about how well people felt informed was that we're doing a pretty good job. 90% said they felt informed to well informed, which is good, but there's always, of course, room for improvement. So we definitely will take that into consideration because there were some people who said they're overwhelmed, right? And I'll get to more of that later. Within the communication survey, they also asked about preference and how they stay connected and the information they receive. from the district and building and classrooms. At the district level, email and the monthly newsletter from the district were the most preferred or most used, followed by social media, specifically our Facebook page was still our number 3 way that people were getting their information from the district. So a few years back, I implemented the Sycamore newsletters that you guys are used to seeing. Prior to that, the buildings were all kind of doing different things. There were these blogs, nobody was really looking at them. So we tried to create some consistency by saying, okay, we're going to send out our building newsletters each Friday so that wherever you are in the K-12 experience, you know that you're going to get your information from your school on Fridays. And the district newsletter is mailed to family, staff, as well as our Gold Card members. And we have about 250 community members who've signed up to receive the newsletter. So it goes out in the first week of each month. It's very well viewed, 33,000 views monthly on average. Now that's not unique views, it's people coming back over and over again. And I can actually see how many times people click on it. There are some people who come back and look at it 12 times in a month, which is good because they know where the information is. It's all centralized. And they're able to access it pretty easily.
Ms. Monbright, if a community member would want to get on that list, how do they do it?
They simply email me. We have that information on our website, and they do. It's surprising people find that information, and I'll get a little email that says sign me up, and then I add them in, and they start receiving it going forward from then on out. So I will say that we kind of limited, and I'll talk a little bit more about this. We limited some of that community receiving the newsletter during the pandemic, just because we had a lot of stuff that really wasn't, didn't necessarily need to be out in the public about our protocols and things that we were doing. So we kind of contained that a little bit more just for staff and families, but we've opened that back up in the last 6 months or so and started to welcome the community back into receiving those.
Mrs. Monbright, can you maybe explain more about the Gold Card membership?
Yeah, so I don't know how long the program has been in place. It was here before I got here. We give gold cards out to community members over the age of 65. We also do for active military and veterans. And essentially the card allows you to get into any events in the district for free, concerts, sporting events, things like that. It's just a way for us to welcome people in and allow them to see some of the excellent things that are going on. So we keep a list of those folks and we keep in contact with them as well. It's been a great resource for me to be able to connect with some folks that might miss what's going on in the district otherwise. So yeah, question. I have to check, I'm not sure where we have quite a few people on that list at this point. It's in the couple hundred at this point. Of course, we share information in as many ways as possible. You know, they say it takes people 7 times to read something before they actually absorb it. So, and people have different preferences on how they receive information, as you saw in the survey. The website is got great use. We've got over 366,000 total visits this year, and then 437,000 page views. So people are using our website. We try to keep it up to date. I try to keep it so that even the building pages aren't static. There's always new information being added, new things, so that people feel like it's worth visiting. Parent Link is what we use. It's our mass notification system. So that's how you receive emails, phone calls, text messages from the district. We sent out 451 messages and that's just emails this school year from the district level. I can only imagine how many more people got from the buildings. That seems high when you think about the number of days that students are in buildings. But a lot of that, as I went back and looked through, were those COVID notifications, because Stacy can tell you we sent out a lot of those, especially at the beginning of the year. So hopefully that comes down a bit. Trying to limit the number of emails that people are receiving, because one thing that came out of that SAC survey that was sent out is that our families with multiple kids in multiple buildings are just overwhelmed. They get so much stuff that they begin to ignore things. So we're trying to make a more concerted effort to hold things for newsletters and not, blast things out, but sometimes it just, the timeliness of something needs to go out, so.
It's kind of like finding that sweet spot.
It is. It totally is. And I wish that Paralink was the sort of system where people could opt in and out of certain emails, like if they only wanted to receive snow day calls and they didn't want to get all the rest of the stuff, but it doesn't allow you to do it. It's all in or all out. So our mobile app has over 7,000 downloads. We started our mobile app a few years back. Blackboard told me at the time that if you can get 60% of your enrollment, like the equivalent to that, downloaded, that you're doing a good job. We're at 122. I'm sure some of those people are maybe have already had kids graduate and they just haven't deleted the app from their phones. We do have a little issue we're working through right now, and hopefully will be resolved before the start of the school year with the iTunes App Store. We're working through it, so it should be up and working again for everyone to download before the beginning of the year. I want to talk a little bit about social media now. We really, this is where our people are. You got to go to where they are. So social media sometimes feels silly, sometimes it's frustrating, but it is so important and crucial for school districts to engage in social media use. I try to be very strategic about what we put out to improve our community engagement. There's a few things it does for us, right? There's fewer misconceptions because, again, we're telling our story. Our community is connected through those positive stories. There's fewer misconceptions and rumors floating around about what's going on in our district. I know we're a public school district, but we are a destination district, so it does allow us to help with recruitment and attracting and retaining not only families, but staff. They want to come here and they want to work here because they see the great things that are happening in our classrooms. Efficiency, obviously, like I said, go to where the people are. We can reach a lot of people quickly through social media. And it's obviously just instrumental for bond campaign, levy time. We don't want to only be telling our great story to our community when we're asking for money. So it's important to keep that going all year, every year. And we have to be really intentional with our storytelling. I think that's an important point. And that I've engaged in some professional development this spring and the summer around social media. And I've got a lot of really great ideas that I think you guys will see coming out this school year that will help us boost our engagement and enhance our storytelling. So I'm pretty excited. It's gotten me energized. After doing this, this will be year 8 coming up. So it's been a few years and you can kind of get, a little stagnant. So it's been nice to go through that and get some really great ideas from other PR people in schools across the country. So I'm excited about some of the things coming this year. So we have a great following on our social media platforms. You can see the followers are actually our total numbers, and the reach and impressions are for this school year specifically. It's funny, I wish that Twitter tracked reach because I think that's more accurate than impressions. Impressions are really just telling you, hey, this showed up in someone's news feed. It doesn't necessarily mean they engaged with the post or even really looked at it. Where reach, you're really understanding who's engaging with your posts. The subscribers to our YouTube channel have wasted 5,200 hours this school year watching school board meetings and videos from Chad. The funny thing is, one of our #1 videos, can anyone guess, might be after
Opening day videos.
Yes, the school bus karaoke continues to get views. I mean, it's been years since we did that, and every once in a while I'll find someone somewhere in the world commenting on it, which is pretty funny. I could go on and on about the algorithms. It's all a game, right? It's a big game to get on people's news feeds. How many of you actually go to the page of an organization that you follow? Okay, maybe everyone. And how about you just hop on your social media accounts and scroll through your news feeds, right? So we have to play the game to get in people's news feeds. And one of those things I like to, it's like a point system, basically. If someone likes a post, it's essentially one point. It's good. If you comment, that's like 7 points, so it's even better. And if you share a post, we get 14 points. So I really am trying to encourage people this year to share our posts. So if you see something, please share it, your personal or professional page, if you feel comfortable, because that's going to help us out a lot and get our information in front of more people. Let's see. So as I mentioned, you got some new exciting things coming this year. One of them, we have a new hashtag this year. We are Aves, the Aviators. So we are Aviators is our hashtag. We did a little poll on Twitter to select that. We were looking for something that was unique, that spoke to our school, that talked a little about our mission and vision, which is hard to do in so many characters, but we wanted it to be inclusive for all stakeholders, and I feel like this is a really great hashtag. So you'll see that a lot going forward on our posts. So never want to give up the opportunity to say something great about our schools, and again, celebrating our students and staff and connecting with our community are the two purposes. We are Aviators. I just talked about the little hashtag. We want to celebrate it all. We want to celebrate from the student who receives that perfect ACT score to our kids who are getting job experience through the TIP program, and our bus drivers. We want to tell all of those stories. Even the little acts of kindness, those little moments that are just, that make you go, oh, you know, that makes you remember when you were in school or your time with your kids and things like that. So we really try to highlight it all. This year, we're going to have a few new things. We have new staff features. So you'll see those in the coming weeks. We're going to highlight our new team members, not only our administrators, but our classified and certified staff who are new to the district, so people can get to know them, which will be a fun new addition. Another shout out to the Sycamore Advisory Commission. They came up with another idea for a project around staff recognition. So starting in September, families and students and even other staff members can nominate any staff member to be an awesome aviator for the month, and we will do, Mr. Lewis and I are going to go surprise that individual. We'll put it out on social media, and it should be a really great thing. And anyone who also receives a nomination will receive a letter notifying them of the great things that were said. We did something similar this spring with our Educator of the Year, which was just so well received, and just like it melted my heart when I read through the nominations, and then also to go into those classrooms and surprise those individuals was a lot of fun. You've heard the term once an Abe, always an Abe. So we really want to highlight our alumni that are doing great things. Can you scoot back real quick? We've done a couple things in the last year. Question of the week. It's really just the simplest thing possible that I could put on social media, some silly question, but they are the most engaging posts we have. In fact, one about who your favorite teacher was and why was the #2 post this year for engagement. So that we're bringing back Throwback Thursday. So look forward to some really fun yearbook photos that'll be coming out. Green and Gold Fridays we started last year to boost spirit around the community. Those have been really well received. We're going to continue that this year. Playing around with that idea, we haven't implemented it yet, but to catch those in the community wearing their green and gold on Fridays, and to make that connection with our businesses and organizations. So they're hopefully encouraging their staff members to wear green and gold. If we can highlight those, I think that'll be a fun opportunity to bring in the community. And also it's just the perfect place for master facility updates. We've got so much exciting stuff going on in this community, and it's a great way for us to update people about those facilities. So a lot of good content, which makes it easy for me. Something else new this year, our social media guidelines for staff. Now, this is something we probably should have had in place a long time ago. A lot of districts either have adopted some sort of guidelines or they are in the process of doing that. We want our staff to engage both professionally and personally on social media, but we want them to do it in a way that is respectful, responsible, safe and to be problem solvers. And you see, I use that common language from PBIS there. It's not a policy. We're not going to be monitoring personal Facebook pages of our employees. However, we just felt like it was time to put some tips in place, some best practices to protect themselves in the event that, you know, someone might share or post something that they probably shouldn't. So those will be coming out to staff this year. Also new, helping us tell our story. We're all storytellers, right? So I'm asking our staff to email me one item per month to post on social media. A photo, a video, just a quick little description, and I'll do something with it. Can you imagine though if that
That's a lot. I was gonna say, Mallory, that's a lot of emails.
a lot of great content. I don't expect that they all will, but if we can start to boost that, it gives me the opportunity to be more strategic with our content and putting out great stories. I've told staff that this is going to be, you know, like it could be book buddies, it can be gym activity, it can be an art project. I just want to see what's happening in your classroom. Not just me, our families and our community want to see that. So of course, a reminder about student privacy. Our staff do a really good job of being aware of who's on the FERPA and media exclusion list in their classrooms. They always have. But again, we're going to reiterate, before you send me something, make sure it's a student who can be, their photo can be shared. And again, I talked a little bit about this, how we kind of kept things tighter during COVID and the pandemic. But we've got these amazing shiny new buildings and renovated buildings going up, and our community drive by them every day. So really it's time we flatten those walls back down, allow people to see what's happening in our classrooms. And I think what they're going to find is that they live in a community where our schools are just so phenomenal and our kids are great and our staff is great. So it's exciting. It's kind of re-energized me and given me a new purpose for this school year. So that's all I had to share with you. Again, thank you for the opportunity. If you guys have any questions, please.
Yeah, thanks. Thanks, Mallory, for sharing that with us. A lot of great things coming. And I'm not a big social media person. I'm more of a scroller and kind of see what's going on. But I do like a lot of things. I just don't share. I just don't particularly comment on everything. But I do think that those questions that you pose, they always sort of make me stop, and I sort of just answer it in my head. So I think those are really effective. And I think the more we can do, I like the community kind of lunch hours that we've had. I think those have been maybe not as well attended as we want them to be, but I think just getting out there and sharing what we're doing in our district with as many people as possible is always a good thing. So thank you so much for all your efforts and positive spin on things. I really appreciate that.
Yeah, and I think it's great as well. And, just the same challenge we always have, how do you reach those, 70% of people that don't have kids in school? And to continue to think about how, even with social media, how can we reach out to those?
Yeah, definitely a challenge.
I appreciate this presentation. Thank you so much. It's great. And I also like what you added in there, and I know you're doing it anyhow, but that you're looking at all the different types of successes that our students have, because there's so many amazing successes in our district on different levels, and to show that all these kids are working really hard, and it's amazing the work that they're doing and they're learning, and I appreciate that, keeping that inclusive. Thank you.
Sure.
Thank you.
Excellent job. Thank you.
Thanks, Scott.
Okay, moving on to item number 4, I need a motion for a change order for Sycamore Junior High School construction project.
Second.
Any questions from the board? Mr. Weber, please call the roll.
Dr. Speaker, aye. Mrs. Weiss.
Aye.
Mr. Comerford.
Aye.
Mr. Ballard.
Aye.
And Mrs. Bitter.
Hi.
Motion passes. I need a motion for the resolution approving GMP amendment number 6 to the CMR agreement with HGC Construction for Sycamore High School project.
So moved.
Second.
Mr. Lobo is not here, but I'll just say I know they've done a good job of trying to pare down the furnishings, reusing furnishings, and we have done a good job in our capital improvement process of purchasing furniture over the years. So it's not a complete replacement of furniture, but it's picking up necessary furniture for the remodel.
From a budget standpoint, we have about 1.2 million remaining in the high school budget for furniture, so the 700,000 you see within the resolution. The remaining funds will be utilized for the administration area, counseling area, and then other things that we see that we open that building. So still have some funds left to complete the first two of that building. So good shape from that perspective.
Thank you very much. Anything from the board? Mrs. Butler?
Mrs. Weiss?
Aye.
Dr. Steger? Aye. Mr. Ballard?
Aye.
Mrs. Bitter? Aye. And Mr. Cuthbert?
I need a motion for the resolution approving GMP amendment number 6 to the CMR agreement with HGC. Sycamore. You just replaced 5, is that correct? Addendum,
It was more detailed.
It was more, you gave us more details.
That's fine.
Yeah, sorry.
So it was just for.
Okay, I started reading that.
Sorry about that.
Moving on then to the next item. Need a motion for transportation and track.
Second.
And this is a typical standing item every year. Obviously, we have to approve the students that are not going to be transported. And you can see down in the resolution that's written there, there are 6 conditions under which we do not transport, and what gets offered to them is a payment in lieu of that transportation. So they get notified from Mr. Lovell's office. They each get the offer to accept that payment, and then they sign off on it. If anyone were to challenge that, then we have to go through a resolution process with ODE. And we've had to do that a couple of times. I would say the caveat to this year is that we did reinstate some transportation for some of our schools. Bowler was one of those schools that, again, we evaluate this every year for cost effectiveness, trying to decide, is it cost feasible to do it? And it's really based on, a lot of it is time and distance and capacity, being able to make sure that we can service those students in a proper manner. So I know that Moeller was one that was put back on because we felt strongly that we were able to do it. CHCA, I believe, is another one that we put a component of that back on and found ways to service it because it was more cost effective for the district to provide funds. So
As well as Mount every day.
about Notre Dame.
Mr. Lewis, can I just for clarification, just because we talk about this every year. So if you put a route, for example, you put Mueller back on, a student living in our district who's going to Mueller, who opts not to take the bus, they do not get the in lieu payment, correct? So if we offer the route, they take the route or they get nothing.
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
So if we approve them this way, they get payment. If there's a route, they do not. That's great. Thank you for that clarification.
And ODE has changed a few of the rules for this program in terms of how much we have to provide and get reimbursement to families. For last year and this year, it's $538 per student, so not per family, per student, to provide payment in lieu of. We had 350 participants last year, so it was about $170,000 that we paid in payment in lieu of transportation last year.
I would imagine the challenges are finding drivers too. I mean, you have these routes in, so.
It's that, and it's also, we have no governance over the times of those schools. So we can only service them, within our, and obviously our students take priority and the state recognizes that. So if the school is not willing to adjust or allow the students some flexibility, there's some of them we just can't do from sheer, we wouldn't get them on time.
Right.
So, but it's also, you'll see a list of students like, when I looked at Cincinnati Country Day on the list this year, there's a lot of students. When we did provide a bus, 0, 1, or 2 would ride. So it was like, well, why are we providing this service or running a bus there? So we evaluate the cost of the payment versus the cost of running the bus there and try to make good financial decisions.
A big thank you to Mrs. Thorson and the Business Operations Department for overseeing the mechanics of this program. So she's working with over 300 families to be able to make this thing happen. So that's great.
Other questions from the board? please call.
Mrs. Weiss.
Aye.
Mr. Comer.
Aye.
Mr. Ballard.
Aye.
Mrs. Bitter.
Aye.
And Dr. Seeger.
Aye.
Motion passes. I need a motion for the designee for transportation routing.
So moved.
Second.
It's a standing item, we have to appoint someone to do routing unless someone else wants to do it, which I do not, so. But Mr. Miller, we approve this every year so that it's clear that he is the designated.
Does an amazing job at the
Does an
routing.
amazing job. So does Mr. Huber. He and Mr. Huber, Mrs. Buchanan, Mrs. Holman are the team that run the office down there. I would say all are involved in some way, shape, or form, but obviously he's the one responsible for the routes.
Any questions from the board? Mrs. Weber, please. Call the roll, please.
Mrs. Weiss.
Aye.
Mr. Comer.
Aye.
Mr. Ballard.
Aye.
Mrs. Bitter.
Aye.
And Dr. Seeger.
Aye.
Motion passes. I need a motion for the approval of school bus stops for 2022.
So moved.
This is another item, standing item that we are required to approve our bus stops every year. I think it's important. Mr. Miller keeps us current. Mr. Miller is very tied into his professional organizations, not only at the state level, but he's in a leadership role typically at the national level for his organizations for people's transportation. So he keeps us up to date. This was one thing when he came to the district that he made sure we were in compliance in all these different areas. So this is one of those compliance items.
Mrs. Weber, please call the roll.
Dr. Seeger.
Aye.
Mrs. Weiss.
Aye.
Mrs. Bitter.
Aye.
Mr. Comer.
Aye.
Mr. Ballard.
Aye, motion passes. I need a motion for the approval of facility use agreements.
So moved.
Second.
So this is about when we allow our community or community groups or outside groups, even outside of our community, to use our facilities. We have different groups, different rates, depending on facility, depending on size of the facility needed, scope of their activity. So it was time for a review of those rates. We hadn't realized that it had been a while. I was the last one to do it prior to me doing it. It was a long time before that. So what Mr. Lovell found in his research of looking at other school districts and comparisons is that we were a little bit out of alignment with the number of groups that people allow. And when I say groups, there are completely outside groups. There's a requirement in our policy that a percentage of your participants have to be Sycamore families or Sycamore people to get a different group rate. And then we also have people that I would say like our youth groups, our Brownie groups, our Girl Scout groups, our Boy Scout groups. We kind of work separately with them because we want our community to use our facility. They are their facilities. They own the facilities. Certainly they've made a huge investment in our facilities. So we do everything we can to support our community groups first and then allow rentals. But with the number of events that we have, and especially right now, like we get frustrated, people are like, well, why can't I use the theater? Well, we only have one theater and we have, as you know, a number of groups that use the theater internally. So there isn't a lot of spare time to have events. When our community theater is done, we'll have some available opportunities. So we want to make sure our rates reflect an appropriate collection of fees for that. We never want our district to have to support something and incur costs because of an outside group. That's not appropriate for our facility.
Yeah, I just wanted to, Mr. Lovell, I don't know if you're still on. He's not, okay. I had a nice conversation with him yesterday about this, and I appreciate one, sort of making it more automated with the form, that there's a process to follow for the whole district. It's not just by building and having to know what each building does. The tier rate was good, and I also talked to him about, I did have some concern about, Girl Scout troops, which I, participated in for a long time, but other groups that have a lot of Sycamore students involved. Some of the prices, even in tier 1, were a little kind of out of price range for some of those groups. And he assured me that, they would be working with them, especially if they are sort of Sycamore affiliated. So I think it's great to kind of bring some framework to that whole process. So thank you.
Great. Any additional Comments or questions from the board? Mrs. Weber?
Mrs. Weiss.
Aye.
Dr. Studer. Aye. Mr. Comer.
Aye.
Mr. Ballard.
Aye.
And Mrs. Bitter.
Aye.
Motion passes. I need a motion for the approval of the contract with Applied Behavioral Services.
So moved.
Second.
Mrs. Spencer, any comments about this one?
Nothing outside of what was provided to you
Any
as a
questions?
summary of the services.
Any questions from the board? Mrs. Weber, please.
Mr. Comer.
Aye.
Mrs. Weiss.
Aye.
Dr. Studer.
Aye.
Mr. Ballard.
Aye.
Mrs. Bitter.
Aye.
Motion passes. I need a motion for the approval of the contract with Kathleen Reed.
So moved.
Second.
Any questions from the board? Mrs. Weber, please call the roll.
Mrs. Bitter.
Aye.
Dr. Studer.
Aye.
Mrs. Weiss.
Aye.
Mr. Ballard.
Aye.
Mr. Comer.
Aye.
Motion passes. I need a motion for the approval of the contract with Stepping Stones.
So moved. Second.
Questions from the board? Mrs. Weber, please call the roll.
Mrs. Weiss.
Aye.
Mrs. Bitter.
Aye.
Mr. Ballard.
Aye.
Mr. Comer.
Aye.
And Dr. Studer.
Aye.
Motion passes. I need a motion for the approval of the contract for Warren County Educational Services Center.
So moved.
Second.
The only comment I would make here is we've partnered with John K. Lazarus Alternative School for a number of years. We typically have 8 seats. John K. Lazarus, and it really is for, I would say, an alternative to expulsion. A lot of the times when we get to that point, it's kind of the last chance for a student to still get some education. Sometimes they do need a break from Sycamore. We actually obviously have other alternative programs here in the district, but that is a potential that we've used. We've had great success with some of the students that have gone there, and some of the ones that may have not have been on a track to graduate end up graduating early. So we value that service as a support for some of our students. And I've gotten to hear, I'm always so proud when I get to go up for right around Thanksgiving, they do a big thing at the alternative program. And twice our students have been the keynote speaker for the event. And there's dignitaries there, there's a lot of political individuals there. And I was just like blown away because the speeches have been so good. It just shows the caliber of students that just because they get sent to the alternative school doesn't mean that they're not a strong student or a high caliber student that can't perform. They just, sometimes they need a different space. So, and then you can see preschool director was listed also. Obviously, we need to go through a transition. And with all the other hires at this point, being able to spend the year evaluating what's the need, and obviously going up with four additional sections, we felt like we need to kind of spend the year evaluating the need of the program. And I have assurances from Mrs. Spencer and Mrs. Belfram that we will take a good hard look at that and come up with a recommendation sometime in the spring of 23 of how we're going to continue to work through this. So this is just a temporary stopgap for that program.
I have a question. Is there an intention to hire a new preschool director then, possibly, or?
We've never had a preschool director. We had a teacher. We had a teacher on a special assignment, and it was a supplemental or a stipend. So that's why we need to spend the time evaluating, is the director needed? Can we still do it with the teacher on special assignment? Does it need to be a stipend? So it gives us that breadth here to look at the need of the program.
So we've never had a preschool director.
Not a director, that's an administrator. We've had, again, Regina Sauer, former school psychologist, serve as a preschool coordinator. Yeah, but she didn't serve in administrative capacity, so couldn't conduct evaluations and some of the other administrative duties that were split between 2 other building administrators.
So do you plan on hiring another coordinator? Preschool? That's what you don't know.
Again, that's what I
We're
think.
evaluating,
This is
so we'll
a
make a
chance to
recommendation in the spring regarding what we feel is needed to maintain oversight of that program and meet the requirements that are set forth in the preschool regulations as well.
I guess my other question would be, it says to secure preschool director services, This is considered an interim then, it's just not
This is
written out.
director in there.
Yeah, essentially, it's a person that is on a contract, just like you approved Emily Schwegman on a, maybe that's coming up, but we're looking at, using these services instead of hiring someone internally, because then once they become our employee, they're here. We're using a contract, this contract expires at the end of the year. So it allows us a flexibility to evaluate the program and determine what our need is. Because with 4 additional sections that we've never had, we don't know what the need is.
But we've never had a director for the preschool, but we're getting ready to hire a director for the preschool.
We're not
Yeah,
hiring
yeah.
a director, we're
That's what-
hiring a
That's what
contract.
it says, secure preschool director.
Service
Now,
director
service doesn't
service.
mean director, like.
Correct. It's not someone that we're employing in our district as a director. They're working through a service contract.
It certainly gives us flexibility and options for next year.
We
Look
appreciate
forward to your
your
recommendations in spring on what the correct path forward is for our district and for our students. So thank you. Any additional comments from the board? Mrs. Weber, please call roll.
Mrs. Weiss?
Aye.
Mr. Comer?
Aye.
Mrs. Bitter?
No,
Dr. Studer?
No,
And Mr. Ballant?
Yes, motion passes. Need a motion for the approval of the contract with Hamilton County Educational Services.
so moved.
second,
So just as Mr. Porter was trying to fill out his team, we knew we needed an interim. He's very familiar with Mrs. Schwegman, so she's a current employee of Hamilton County ESC. So instead of transferring her to the district for a year and then putting her back, it was a better situation to just work through Hamilton County ESC for a contract. So that total cost, the reason it's so high, it includes all her fringe benefits in that. So her salary would be $95,000, just like everyone, the other, which is lower than the other high school assistant principals. But I wanted to make that clear because the total cost includes all those fringes, and then there's a small administrative fee. But again, it gives us that flexibility. January of 23, we will post that position and hire a permanent assistant principal for Sycamore. Unless Mrs. Shunk is going back to the high school. So that's where the decision making, behind moving parts, but it's exciting, so.
And this is really no different. We've had interims fill in for medical reasons or other openings that we've had as well. Yeah. Additional questions?
I just want to say that I think it's completely, I think that's a great option to utilize, this opportunity to have an interim assistant principal or potentially even a person in preschool. My issue isn't necessarily with that. My issue is just more with the provider itself, which is why I voted no before. But I think the Hamilton County ES Service Center is going to provide us a good option for this. I feel the same way on the other one.
She's done a great job. She's been at our team meetings, she was at the retreat, and you would not expect her to be an interim assistant principal the way she's engaged with our team. It's been,
Just resident joining our team.
maybe Mr. Porter may convince her that it's the right move, but so it'll be a fun process, kind of figuring out all the rest of the moves at the end of the year. Next year.
And you would anticipate what time frame starting the search for a permanent?
So it'll all hinge upon, Mrs. Shunk, who's the interim principal at the junior high. Obviously, I think we feel confident that it's a nice tryout for her. It doesn't mean she won't have to go through a process with the junior high staff unless it's just like absolutely overwhelming. But we put other interims through processes, so I want to be fair to her to earn the position. If she were to stay at the junior high, then we would post her, because that's her position in high school. So I would anticipate anywhere between January and March, starting that process. I could try to finish that up. I would love to have my summer next year. So,
Any additional questions? Mrs. Weber, please call roll.
Mrs. Weiss?
Aye.
Dr. Studer?
Aye.
Mr. Comer.
Aye.
Mr. Ballard.
Aye.
And Mrs. Bitter.
Aye.
Motion passes. I need a motion for the approval of the contract with Impact.
So moved.
Seconded.
So this contract, if you recall, we are partnered with the Impact Group to help us with our, I'll say rehab of our strategic plan objectives. And I'm really excited. Next meeting, I will bring you that update. Our team got to see it and give some input yesterday. It was very engaging and energizing. I told Mr. Ballard just a little bit ago that to watch the team interact and like own parts of the strategic plan and own the objectives. And I think you're going to be shocked because we added objectives. You probably would think we would take some away, but we didn't. We added some. And we have timeframes and we have responsible people. But so I wanted to evaluate the Impact Group's work before I brought you another contract to work with them. But this is a part of the strategic plan. We've talked about the need to do a cultural assessment. So approving this contract will allow us to move forward with we're going to do a September cultural assessment and then do it again in January. And then that information will help inform kind of the next steps of that part of the strategic plan. So, and when you think of cultural assessment, I think some people go right to like, oh, this is diversity. No, it's talking about the culture of our district. You know, how do our staff, how do our students, how do our families perceive our district? So it's going to be gathering that information. It's not about supporting the diversity of our district. We do have an objective working on that. It'll be completely separate. I want to make sure that was clear. So when we put it out, we're going to talk about it more as a climate assessment, because I think that's more clear to people. When you hear cultural, you immediately go to the diversity of the district. So climate is, I believe, more.
Do they have an organizational psychologist working with that or a sociologist doing that
I
project? Do you
wouldn't
know?
have that information.
Okay, I'm just. throwing
This
that out.
is just to get that, literally that assessment started.
I get asked, I'm sure we all get asked the question about the information, the focus groups that we did prior to COVID, where we've had, families coming in, giving feedback, and that goes to our strategic plan as well. Does this overlap? Is this separate? A lot of people are asking, I've been asked, what are you doing with the impact group? We already did this. I try to explain that it's not the same thing. This is separate. Can you just sort of distinguish so that the community can understand?
This is separate from the focus groups that you did. Those focus groups were to still see what were the priorities related to the strategic plan for our district, for our community, for our staff. That was so that we could rewrite our objectives to make them make better sense to our community. This is to, again, accomplish a goal of the strategic plan, which is to look at our culture, to look at our climate, and to decide, are we in a place that we need to make changes? Do we make adjustments? Do we need to improve our culture? Because to be quite honest with you as a board, and I shared this with you when I was first hired as superintendent, you cannot move forward with the goals of the district. You cannot accomplish the tasks that you want to accomplish. You won't get to the achievement growth that you want for students if we don't have a good climate or culture where students and staff feel valued. That's how you move it. And you all are professionals in different places. You cannot move the organization without that. So this will give us great data as to see where are we as an organization, what do we need to address, what do we need to improve upon, what are we doing well, what are we not doing well, and give us tremendous data to be able to make those adjustments as needed. But I do believe that the work we have done, and when you get to see the updated product, I think you're going to be very pleased with not only the preservation of the goals that we had as a district. I think there's still some additional work to be done on some of the things, but I think we'd be very pleased to see where it has moved from a document that maybe was not as well understood to a place where I really think our community will be able to wrap their mind around, hey, here's where they're going. This makes sense to me.
you anticipate that to the board?
Next meeting. I gotta check, make sure their updates are done, so I'd like to get it to you in time. Obviously, I leave tomorrow afternoon. I'm hoping to be off the grid until August 15th as much as possible. But I would like to get it to you in an early stage so that you can get it digest, and really kind of feel what changes were made. But we really took a good hard look at, and the message from us and you was clear to the impact group, the goal to remain the same. I think we accomplished that. Great.
Last question. So who will receive the cultural assessment survey that will gauge the sentiment of the leadership team and staff members? What does that go to?
So once,
Is that the community?
it should be all stakeholders. So, but again, this is to get us started so that I can have those conversations with them about exactly what are the groups, what format are we going to use, how's it going to look, so that we can collect that feedback.
Just to clarify, Mr. Lewis, the cultural assessment was part of the original strategic plan. This is just the vehicle by which to conduct that survey,
Correct.
to gather the information.
And we knew last year was not a good time to collect culture information, but a lot of changes and still dealing with all the COVID response.
Yeah, good, very interesting stuff.
Yeah.
Second, Laura.
Make sure I know. Second.
I saw it on.
And I thought that was weird, so, okay. All right.
Keep it fresh.
You don't want
Yeah,
that.
yeah.
Keep it fresh.
Gotta keep it moving too.
You can do it.
This is what we're.
Mrs. White.
Aye.
Mr. Ballard.
Aye.
Dr. Steger. Aye. Mrs. Bitter.
Aye.
And Mr. Comer.
Aye.
Motion passes. Mr. Lewis, additional others?
Yeah, just a few things, because I couldn't let these things go by without mentioning them. I just want to say, Mrs. Weber, Mr. Harden, Mr. Lovell, and myself went to the boosters meeting on Monday. We owe them a huge thank you, not only for their initial donation of $250,000 to the stadium to make that project happen, but they stepped up again and are donating another $80,000 to the ticket booth and entry to make sure that those are funded and in place for our student athletes. And really, I would say the bigger thank you is just for everything they do to support us, and hours and hours of being in that concession stand and raising funds, and it's a lot of work, and that's 330,000 from volunteers. So I would be remiss to not recognize that. Also, I thought it was important for our community and for our board to recognize that our partnership with UC Health has started. That started July 1. We signed that agreement, seems like probably about 18 months ago, but that agreement is in full effect, and we have been getting great service. But I also wanted to kind of reassure our community and our team that we were able to keep our 2 high school trainers as part of that agreement, and they transferred over to, so UC Health's partner is NovaCare to provide our training services. So they are part of NovaCare, and so our trainers are still the same, and they will still get the same great service at our high school. And then our team orthopedic doctor, Dr. Branham, is a community member. He lives in our community. He has students in our schools. So there's just no greater connection that you can have than being a part of the Sycamore family. So he has always been someone that supports our student athletes. He spends a lot of time at youth sports, and I know he's a familiar face. And again, huge thank you to him, and not only his commitment to taking care of our student athletes, but his commitment to the community. Huge start of fall season. So good luck to all of our directors. Our band is gearing up, all of our participants, our coaches, and our athletes. I know a lot of activity in the high school, and it's really tough, but it's still being worked on. But and our students never complain; they make it work. So, and then the last thing I had, I think it would be remiss to not mention, is just our active shooter exercise this past weekend. A huge thank you to David Foster, who really did all the coordination with the teams from the municipalities Brad Lovell, Mr. Ballant, thank you not only for being there, being present, but also Mr. Ballant at the end of the day got a role that just got thrown upon him to be a angry parent. And I think the team was not expecting him to come up and start screaming in their face, but it was a good practice because it's something that really could happen. And I think he may have scared some of our administrators, so. He's getting a little red over there, but it was a good time. It was good practice for us, so. And then our teaching staff, we had teaching staff there, we had a lot of administrators there, our custodial staff, our maintenance staff. Just a huge thank you to everyone that participated in, and I know many people in this room sitting at this table participated. And then the special thank you is the City of Blue Ash Police Department, the Fire Department, Chief Knoll, Lieutenant Holman, City Manager Waltz, and a special thank you to Sergeant Show, who was running around the entire day coordinating all of the activities. He was the one that planned out the scenarios. I mean, it took a lot of coordination. I'm talking, this has been going on for several months of planning. And it was a large scale drill. So the other municipalities, the other coordinating agencies, we had multiple, I would say there were, Stacy, there were probably over 100 police officers on site, fire, medics. Hamilton County had their complete response team here. It was awesome. And then also, you know, Ms. Bonner, I don't probably appreciate this. A big thank you to channels 5, 12, and 19. They all did a phenomenal job of covering it, but also, you know, understanding their role as media and kind of, you know, navigating how they could be a part of it, but not be in the way. And really, I felt all the coverage they were really good stories. So huge thank you to them. That's all I have. So it was a little long-winded, but a wonderful exercise on Saturday.
Yeah, and I'll just echo what you said about the appreciation for all of our first responders that took part in it, and all of our staff, particularly Mr. Foster and Mr. Lovell, who organized the whole thing. You know, as a parent, it was disturbing that we need to do things like this, but also very reassuring that you know, our first responders are prepared and are ready to assist in anything that could happen in our community schools. So a special shout out to our communities for participating in it. Moving on, I need a motion for the approval of the 2022-2023 student academic fees. I'm still struggling to get that 23 year in there, but we'll get it eventually. So moved.
Second.
Any questions or comments? I would just like to say, you know, thank you to the Child Nutrition Department. You can see there, you know, we're going, you know, there are no fees. There's no increase in fees. Is that right? Sorry, not, yeah. Sorry, this is not child nutrition, but there's no increase in fees. And I know as a parent, with everything else in the whole world going up, obviously our costs are going up, and the ability for us to maintain these for this year is a big appreciation. So thank you to our staff. Mrs. Weber, please call the roll.
Mr. Comer.
Aye.
Dr. Seeger. Aye. Mrs. Weiss.
Aye.
Mr. Ballant.
Aye.
And Mrs. Bitter.
Aye.
Motion passes. I need a motion for the approval of the personnel consent agenda, which includes item number 1, H, I, J, and 2, J, and K. Second. Mrs. Weber, please call the roll.
Mrs. Weiss.
Aye.
Mr. Comer.
Aye.
Mr. Ballant.
Aye.
Mrs. Bitter.
Aye.
Dr. Seeger. Aye.
Motion passes. Moving on to other Board of Education business. Item number 1, again, hard to believe that November is not that far away. I need a motion for the approval of the OSBA capital conference. I encourage all board members to attend if possible. I think it's a great conference that OSBA puts on with a lot of learning opportunities. So.
I'll let that was.
What is the, do you have the date?
It's November 13th to the 15th.
Thank you.
And I would also suggest catching a really enthusiastic and engaging presentation by Mrs. Wagner, Mr. Lovell, and myself.
Yeah, so it's nice. I was like, I did not commit to that. I wouldn't miss it.
If you need an angry parent, we know you can.
I'm done with that role.
I think he's.
I didn't get
last
cut.
acting role.
I didn't get cut, but.
Oh, no, he embraced it. He embraced it.
I wasn't that bad, was I? No. Mrs. Weber, please call the roll.
Mrs. Weiss.
Aye.
Mr. Comer.
Aye.
Mrs. Bitter.
Aye.
Dr. Seeger.
Aye.
And Mr. Ballard.
Aye, motion passes. There were no video cameras up there. Don't check first.
Thank you.
Item number 2, I need a motion for the approval of the OSBA delegate. I think we better.
Maybe appoint
We
somebody.
better appoint somebody. So
Recommend.
I'm going to ask for volunteers. Mr. Comerford, maybe, I think you were the one last year. You could describe what this entails.
So this role responsibility is to represent the district in the all board session where the platform revisions are reviewed and voted on. You'll have the chance to get the platform. So that the platform is what guides the state school board association on their work. And so each district has a vote on the platform revisions. Those platform revisions come through about a month in advance of the meeting. It gives us a chance to agree, align, or be aligned with the platform revision changes. But then in the meeting, you can express comments and ultimately vote on the platform changes. And they vote on them change by change. So it's not an overall, so there's time for discussion on each platform item. It's about a half a day of the session that goes through the platform revisions.
You did get a free lunch, right? Free lunch.
No lunch was.
I did it. I did it. I think when I originally did it.
Being at that, you're right, you met us for lunch, so.
Okay. I think when I did it many years ago.
There's no free lunch.
There was no free lunch.
And that's something else. Yeah. So there are no. It's a good chance to be
I am
part of the
happy-
process.
I am happy to do it, because I plan on going, and I remember talking to you about this last year, Dr. Steve, if you want to volunteer, you can too, but
Oh,
I'm
we do
happy
need
to
an
do it.
alternate too.
I'm happy to do it.
I'll take the alternate position.
Great. I think it's a really good opportunity as a new board member to kind of just get into the weeds of that and really, it's great.
And to really understand
And we've
that.
all, I think everyone's sitting, I mean, the 3 of us have all done it, right? Okay,
I think everyone's gonna
Sure.
want to do it.
Okay, so then we will have Mrs. Bitter to be the delegate and Dr. Seegers to be the alternate. So I will now ask for a motion for the approval of Mrs. Bitter as the OSBA delegate and Dr. Seegers as the alternate. The OSBA conference number 14.
Second.
Mrs. Bitter, please call the roll.
Dr. Seeger.
Aye.
Mr. Comer.
Aye.
Mrs. Weiss.
Aye.
Mr. Ballard.
Aye.
Mrs. Bitter.
Aye.
Thank you very much for volunteering. Moving on, Dr. Seeger, Sycamore Advisory Commission update.
So we actually met Mr. Lewis and Mr. Draft and I met on Monday. One thing we were talking about was our ideas, and I will be sending you guys an update for our ideas for this year to see if you want to augment the list a little bit. But Mr. Lewis will be discussing some things in the fall, like the curriculum review, and then some research topics will be introduced in October. So we're looking forward to hearing from Mr. Lewis in September. And then the meetings, to remind everybody, in the public, the second Tuesday of the month, September through May, 7:30 till 9 are the meetings. And then we are going to actually be having a meet and greet, so the SAC members could meet each other, and I can be there, Mr. Lewis will be there. It is going to be on September 8th from 7:30 to 8:30 at Slats and downtown Road. So that's all for now. Like I will, in a month and a half, I will have more for you. But the board members will be looking forward, hopefully, to an updated email from me with some ideas coming from our meeting on Monday.
When do you need comments back from the board on ideas? Is that something there's a
Mr.
time?
Lewis would
Pretty
fast.
quickly, because I was gonna mention, and certainly you're welcome to give feedback, that we've had probably 6 projects already submitted for consideration, which Mr. Comerford's gonna be jealous, because usually we're like, trying to get stuff. And now we have an infusion of like really strong projects. And so, Dr. Seeger's right, she'll send you there are kind of like 4 that are being considered right now, and that's usually the limit is 4. So if you agree with them, that would be helpful but if you see something like that, you're like, man, I really thought about this and I would love this to be considered. We welcome that, and we'll gauge that with our executive team to kind of see which ones are the right ones. But I also want to mention, Dr. Seeger, if you're okay with this, I just want to mention, like you heard Mallory mention a couple of the ones, like I think it's important to show our team that they're not only doing research, but that now, last year they went and did action-oriented items. We're taking action on their items. So you heard the Awesome Aviator. They call it Aviator Acknowledgement, but Awesome Aviator will be in play September. We will start that. The non-monetary staff recognition group, we're working on, getting the wings and buying the bars and getting the recognition for the years of service. Engaging the 30%, making sure our communications, Mallory just used some of that data in her presentation. And really, she said to me, that was one of the best SAC projects I've been a part of because it really informed my work. So I think what we've done is, and Mrs. Raff has done a phenomenal job of kind of helping us, and Dr. Seeger and Mr. Comerford did too, is we want to turn towards action-oriented items that can really help inform the work. And I think it makes the committee members feel valued for their work. The preserving E.H. Green and junior high, the historical, that was a tough project because we had to I think we've decided we won't try to do projects that are walking simultaneously. We want it to be something that like they do and it informs our work. And then I have a meeting for when I come back from vacation already set up for the alumni coordinator, development director. It's an alumni who has served in this capacity and is currently serving in that capacity with a nonprofit. So I think it's important that we keep following back up. So we'll give that update too.
If you don't mind me sharing one of the ideas. So one of the ideas is for the elementary schools, how are we going to tie them all together so that we feel like one community rather than our little segmented buildings? That's one of the projects that's active in January. I find it's gonna be amazing. We still want the Blue Ash Elementary School to be the Owls. That was one of our discussion points. We still want everyone to maintain their own identity, but we want everyone to feel like they're one, starting in preschool, kindergarten, all the way through 4th, and then really agreeing together.
But Dr. Seeger, to your point, like last night, I used your hashtag. Like the project is going to be hashtag We Are Aviators.
Right.
Like that should be the name of the project, so that they understand that everyone is an aviator. Because Dr. Seeger's right. When I came to the district, I was told, "Well, we're not all aviators." I'm like, "What?" Because I sent Go Aves at the end of one of my emails, and I was told, "Well, there are owls, there are stars, there are." And I'm like, "Oh, we're still all aviators." There's one umbrella. So I was but that mindset has gone away many moons ago. But I think what I heard from the project team, or at least the consideration of this, is we want to find a way to bridge that gap earlier, not just a green. We want to bridge that gap earlier so that maybe we do joint events for our elementaries to all attend and, get to know each other. Like the kids all play on sports teams together.
Yeah.
They attend Girl Scout troops together, but before 5th grade, they don't do anything together at school. So how can we help bridge that gap? So it's one of the projects under consideration.
And then one other ask I'm going to be sending to you for, I don't know, Brad, you might be out of this one, you might, feel like you had a lot of time. It's just that we were going to invite you to take a meeting to come join us, introduce yourselves at the meeting and see what's going on.
So we're not coming to the meet and greet, correct? Or it's not coming to.
I don't know.
I think it was meant for
For the
SAC.
SAC group
Okay.
to really get to know each other, because we sat in such a large room last year. It was really hard to, we're gonna be back in this room again, so.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah.
That was a big.
It was hard to get to know.
I look forward to your email.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you for your update.
Thank you.
Next item is Sycamore Business Advisory Council update. So we have met with a small subset of team members and administrators to really begin to formalize what the BAC is going to look like moving forward. Very clear that change is required and change is needed, and we just now need the pathway to get to where that change is. There are no current meetings scheduled. The hope is that we will have our first obviously that'll all be noticed and put on the website as well. We have started to develop a questionnaire for current members to ask their business, to determine their business background, their interest in continuing, and also their interest in what subcommittees that they will be, they would have interest in. We will gauge the interest of current members, and then we'll also seek to have new members join as well. So my ask of the board is if there are people that they feel in the community would be interested in the BAC, please let me know, and we will be developing a questionnaire as well. And we will then send out to new members. We want to make sure that we're adequately representing our community from a business standpoint. So if you can start thinking of names, and then once that questionnaire for the new members is developed, we will send that out to them. We will have leadership development in place, similar to SAC. And one of the projects this year will be to develop the bylaws of the BAC moving forward. And again, they will be based on what we currently have for SAC with some modifications. And then obviously membership will be approved by Board of Education prior to the first meeting, similar to SAC. Any questions about the BAC?
We should just send them, just send you if you want to.
Send me their names and their contact information, and then once we have the questionnaire developed, which will hopefully be in the next couple of weeks, and we get the responses back from current members, then we'll start to see new members.
I will offer, I did send the questionnaire out to current members.
Okay, okay. Great. Next item is health aides update, Mr. Lewis.
Sure. So just a quick overview of just some, I think, key components for our healthy aids update. Our decision-making framework that we used last year will remain in effect. Some important factors that we considered while we were making decisions last year: evaluation of case numbers in the school district and individual buildings. This year we'll be doing that. It'll be strictly looking at absenteeism when we look at those, because that's when I look at what is not required anymore. Contact tracing and reporting are no longer required by Hamilton County, and I'll cover that in a moment. But so we'll need to look at our parent reporting, our reporting mechanism, the absenteeism at the building level. Evidence of in-school spread. Again, we have a large number of absentees in a classroom, and that'll be something that would trigger that discussion. Our vaccination rates, which I'll cover in a minute, were one of the important factors in our core zip code data, was the other more important factor from that. And if you recall, we had a decision-making framework and revised that in spring, March 23rd, 2022 was when we last revised that. So that remains in place. Policy EBEA remains in place regarding our facial coverings. Guidance from Hamilton County, and this came straight from Greg Kesterman, who is the Commissioner of Hamilton County Public Health. Mask to stay, test to play remains in effect, and believes that that will remain in effect. And they confirmed that at ODH for the 22-23 school year. Contact tracing and reporting are no longer required. And his comment to me was that the responsibility has shifted to the parents and families to do that monitoring versus having schools do it. And then the evidence of that is he mentioned, and I think he mentioned, must have mentioned in other circles, their additional support that they had, the increased staffing has been reduced at Hamilton County and Ohio Department of Health. So I think that's an important factor. Some data for our district that I think is important: our vaccination rate in the adult population for 45242 is 89.6%. That was as of July 28th. For 45249, it's 81.8%. Talking with Mr. Clayton, who was one of our team members, and he does this work every single day because he's a public health commissioner. He said the pediatric populations remain very close to the larger population vaccination rate. So he said the increase in cases, the hospitalizations over the last few weeks are substantially lower than any of the numbers that we experienced in those spikes in fall of 21 or winter of 22. And then current subvariant has a very low likelihood of severe illness, much lower than other variants. And then obviously our school data, we don't have any right now. We're not in school, which is not necessarily a bad thing. Considerations for us, things that we want to do, we remain committed to reviewing our data and keeping an eye on the ball. Making recommendations and decisions based on our data. And that has been our process all throughout this entire multiple years. Currently, we have no school data to review, so I wouldn't have any recommendations at this time. And just a reminder, we're currently in a mask optional environment. Any spikes or concerns, we will remain prepared to respond just as we did last year, and we'll do that on an as-needed basis. I appreciate the service of the DART team in the previous school years. They were extremely helpful. We will continue to seek advice from members of that team. They certainly are advisors. I call them when needed, but it would be on an as-needed basis. We're not planning on scheduling regular meetings because at this point, each of them would reach out if there were any new information. And they're busy professionals, and unless there is something new that we would need to learn, that has worked and has served us well over the last several months. So I think having them come together as a team would be a disservice to them at this point. We will continue to monitor the data. We have about 3.5 weeks till the start of school, and if we've learned anything about COVID, that things can change drastically in 3 weeks. So those are my comments about healthy age. I'm happy to answer any questions about healthy age, but we look forward to again starting the school year and getting our students back, and again monitoring the data and reacting to the data as we've had throughout this process.
I have a quick question for you. Hamilton County has moved to suggesting masks in indoor settings, and a bunch of corporations in the area have also moved toward that. Would you be following suit with the highly transmitted school? This is based mostly on sewage data of the high rates we have in the county, because the PCR testing is not at-home tests. So how are we going to use, they can't mandate masks, but it may suggest, are we going to be using their suggestions to move toward indoor masking, or just reacting, like potentially creating a spread?
We're just going to continue in an optional mask environment. If people believe that that's the decision they need to make, that they will make that decision for themselves. Again, we're still 3.5 weeks out from school, so making any kind of suggestion at this point, I don't have any data based on our criteria to make that decision. So.
And I would just emphasize the fact that, you stated it, Mr. Lewis, but that, the parents are responsible. If your kids are sick, stay home.
That's going to be one of the key components. Mr. Clayton stressed the need for vaccination. I think we've made a point as a board and as a team. It's not my role to tell people to go get vaccinated. That's a decision they have to make for themselves. Certainly, I would encourage that, because I think that's the best protection that they can have, but that's not my role to give them that suggestion. And at this point, I think the best thing we can do is continue to monitor our data, react to data, and make data-informed decisions.
If students are sick with COVID and they're staying home, will they have that opportunity to get their schoolwork and keep up? If they have to quarantine, will we continue that?
It would be treated like any other illness. Yeah, I mean, we do that for all students.
But I mean, sometimes
They're not going to be able to
virtual,
type into the classroom. We're not requiring that of teachers. We didn't do that last year. Teachers have that option to offer it, but they certainly connect with their students, make sure that they're keeping up, but it would not be treated as like you immediately get a virtual option for 10 days or something like that.
So that's gonna go away.
That wasn't here last year.
They didn't do that last year. I thought that if a student was.
It was permissible for a teacher to do it. It was not required.
But
Teachers always have that option.
But will
to
it
decide
still
what
be
to do.
permissible? I guess is what I'm getting to. Will that?
That's
still-
really a teacher decision. That's not something we're gonna require of our teachers.
Sure, but it's still, it's an option, like, it'll continue from last year, whatever that procedure was.
Yeah, motion to go into executive session for ORC 121.22G1 to consider the employment of compensation of investigation of charges or complaints against the public employee, official, or regulated individual. And in accordance with ORC 121.22G5 to consider matters required to be kept confidential by federal law, regulations, or state statutes. Sorry.
So moved.
Second.
I just will make the comment that we will be coming out of executive session. I don't know when, but we will be coming out of executive session to take a vote on items number 7 and 8, which is administrative salaries and classified directors. Robert, please call the roll.
Dr. Seeger. Aye. Mrs. Weiss.
Aye.
Mr. Ballard.
Aye.
Mrs. Bitter. Aye. And Mr. Comer.
Aye.
Motion passes. We will take a 5-minute break.
I think.
Okay, we are back. Yep, we're back. Out of executive session, and I need a motion for the approval of administrative salaries 2022-2023 contract year.
So moved.
Second.
Any questions or comments from the board? Mrs. Weber, please call the roll.
Mrs. Weiss.
Aye.
Mr. Comer.
Aye.
Mr. Ballard.
Aye.
And Mrs. Bitter.
Aye.
Motion passes. I need a motion for the approval of the classified director and supervisor salaries 2022-2023 contract year.
So moved.
Second.
Mrs. Weber, please call the roll.
Mr. Comer.
Aye.
Mrs. Weiss.
Aye.
Mr. Ballard.
Aye.
And Mrs. Bitter.
Aye.
Motion passes. Meeting adjourned. Thank you, everybody.
Thanks, everybody.